Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Let's take a trip back to about 2 years ago when I first received this comment right here. Heyo. So, for the next episode of this series, can you maybe check out Fairy Foxes? It's a web series here on YouTube. I'd love to see it reviewed on your show. As you can see, I do take requests and I do eventually fulfill them. If you actually have any requests yourself, go ahead and leave them below in the comments and I will get to them in the next 2 years or so, however long it takes. You may be wondering what a Fairy Foxes is, and I'm here to tell you all about it right here in this video. It is a niche little show that started on what I like to call the golden age of YouTube. I'm talking about a period where YouTube, between the years of about 2006 to 2009, was in its peak infancy. And from then on, it went from a small little video hosting site into one of the biggest video hosting sites in the world, but not big enough that everyone wasn't still trying to compete with it. Imagine trying to compete with Google now. Yeah. It is funny. Back in this infancy age was a whole slew of a more unrefined but very charming original content, mostly animations and short films and sketch comedy. Videos were shorter, less than 10 minutes long, thank God. You know, I appreciate that people pull up full-length TV episode-length videos or even movie-length videos just up on the internet for free. I don't have the time to watch all those videos anymore. It's just, no one does. No one really does. So I don't know why you try. I say that and I've had like 2 or 3 hour live streams, but those are live streams. Those are different. Okay? And one of them was a request for a game review. But a lot of these series that started out in the 2006 to 2009 era that were of this variety, animations, sketch comedy, short films and all that, not a lot of them have survived, but the test of time has proven for one specific niche little series that not too many people know about, but quite a few people are fond of. So let's dive right into a Fairy Foxes here on How Furry Is It? I think the plot synopsis that is available on this YouTube playlist of all of the episodes of Fairy Foxes so far, I think best sums up this series. I'll go ahead and read it for you right here. Foxes that live above the clouds are involved in an epic civil war involving hawks that want to destroy the human race in order to become the dominant species. Only the legendary Finder and Keeper can use the power of the Akira amulet to stop the evil Hawk King from acting out his plan. The only problem, neither really know what they're doing. When first diving into the series, you're going to find episode 1, and episode 1 is the roughest, most amateur looking piece of animation you'll find on YouTube. The fact that it went on for another 5 other episodes, 6 total, within this little era of YouTube, it's like the dedication that you don't really see nowadays, you know? It's cute, it's quaint. It shows its amateurish qualities right there for everyone to see. Down to the fact that this was done by one person and a bunch of their friends and family when they were like 11 or 12 years old, when I would put amateurish videos up on YouTube myself. I didn't do animations or anything fancy like that. Oh no, I just did gameplay videos of me playing Stepmania. Here is footage of me, 10th or 11th grade, I forget which one at this point, doing some sort of Stepmania, and it's not even that good compared to how people play Stepmania nowadays, you know. But there were other amateur efforts like this up on YouTube. Do you remember a series called Arby and the Chief? If you are familiar with the phrase, my rufflecopter goes squaw, 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 then you are familiar with this series, I believe.
Hello. Hey guys. What are going on in this level?
Because it is the same exact Microsoft Sam voice, just applied to a Master Chief action figure along with a Arbiter action figure. And it's got machinima elements as well. I don't know if it's gotten any good ever since its initial debut. I just remember watching it when I was a younger person and stopping after, I don't know, a good amount of episodes. I just lost interest after a while. Apparently, it's still going on. But going back to Fairy Foxes, While the animation looks rough, while the voice acting is not done by professionals per se, once we hit maybe episode 7 or 8 of this series of 12 so far, there's some decent quality that's been put into the series since then. Not everyone has this high-pitched 11-year-old voice anymore. Not everyone is doing the same lol random 2008 to 2009 style joke, even though some of them are quite charming in their own regards in this animation. I mean, the influences of anime and other internet series and just general internet culture are apparent in this series, but there were plenty of times that it did actually make me chuckle or laugh out loud, like the ongoing joke of using fire magic or some sort of fire spell against the Hawks, and then they turn into KFC buckets, you know, because fried chicken. There's a good amount of just either EDM or random DDR music for any sort of music occasions in this web series. It's a type of aesthetic that I don't hate, and I do find it just, you know, charming. It has its own charm. It's like, it has its own character and its own style. It is a pinpoint to what exactly the era of this series was in. I can't say if it's any good or not. I feel like since this came out when I was in about high school, heading into community college, I don't know if I would have actually dug this series or if I would have just torn right into it. But now that I'm older and more mature, I can see how much more quaint this series is, in a good way. My favorite characters so far are the edgelord Kai and his sibling, I forget if it was a half-brother or some sort of step-brother or something, Andre, just because their dynamic is the most developed.
Get them surrounded! I want them captured! Alive! We're dead.
It becomes the most developed, I should say, throughout the series. All the other characters are fine. I just find Kai and Andre the more entertaining of the characters. There's also the random old couple that has not shown up at all since about episode 7 or 8, mostly because of where the plot goes and what the story tends to focus on now.
I wonder who that was!
Would you like some cookies?
But yeah, I do appreciate the upgrades and the dedication that this one sole creator, this one artist, put into this little pet project over the next, I don't know, 11 or 12 years. I actually do have an interview that I've done with the creator of this series at the end of this video, if you want to stick around for that. I might make it its own separate video. If people want that, I'll just do that a couple days after I upload this video. But there's some good insight from her as an amateur artist turned professional. Professional as in she actually does art for a living, as opposed to just being an 11-year-old messing around on the internet. But eventually it goes from unregistered hypercam and MS Paint to like 3D modeling and flash animation, it looks like. Actual good special effects and some blocking and decent choreography with the fight scenes later on, especially in the latest episode, episode 12. Not gonna go into spoilers, but man, it's looking pretty decent. And again, I wouldn't even be talking about this series had it not been for the request, and for the fact that it started from such a low budget and went into what looks like, you know, the potential of a really good series.
Now, it ain't no floating book library, but you gotta admit, we Morrowind royals have good taste.
I'm not going to talk much about the story or the plot just because there's not a lot to talk about. Actually, you know what? There are a couple things I do want to talk about. Spoiler warning, by the way. I'm going to be spoiling a couple of things of this 12-year-old to now-ish series. There was a big gap between episodes, I'll just say. For the better, I might add, just because there's a real upgrade to it, as I've been saying. So the main reason that the Hawks want to kill all the humans and this one scary-looking Hawk King, he has a mechanical scary eye, because, you know, he's the main villain and all that. He's the BBEG. Big Bad Egg. Get it? Because he's a bird. The main reason that he wants all the humans rid of, and he's conspiring with these foxes to kill all these humans, is because the humans used to hunt the Hawks, I think. But the foxes were able to outsmart humans.
A long time ago, the humans were our predators, and we were their prey. Only the foxes could outsmart the humans. But on the other hand, we could overcome the foxes and make them do our bidding.
Even though, like, humans hunt foxes as well. There's been, like, a problem with hunting foxes and overkilling them, just like with overkilling and hunting any species. So that doesn't really make sense. I guess you had to find some way to give the evil bad guys some sort of reason, but it just seems kind of flimsy. But then again, this was written by a 12-year-old, so what do you know? So I think when the foxes and the fairy foxes and all the anthro creatures go from the human world back to their own spot up in the clouds, just away from the humans, the series does actually get better. Like, there's still decent scenes where they meet up with each other and we learn more about the universe and its rules and why they do things. The writing does usually get better. It kind of feels like these human characters are almost like self-inserts, or at least references to the family and friends that the creator worked on the series with. Shout out to the lone, I think, Asian American cameo side character that shows up. That is the representation that usually shows up in amateur efforts like this. There's more minority casting and all that, per se, so I can always appreciate that. And outside of that, it just seems like I don't know. I'm not digging too deeply into this plot, just because it started out kind of silly in the beginning, even though it gets more action-packed later on.
It says here that the Akira amulet supplies our entire world with magic, as well as the ability to fly. The holder of the amulet will have powers surpassing our knowledge if they know how to use it. Nobody knows how to use it except for the keeper.
Like, it's not explained why a finder and a keeper exist, how they come to be, why they're born into the position they're in, and how they gain their powers, and why the amulet suddenly works with them. I mean, there's an explanation for how the rules work for this keeper and finder, but there's no real concrete reason of how they came to be. It's just they exist, and they're the saviors of the world for some reason. Well, the human world, I should say. Spoilers over for now. So now let's talk about how furry this Fairy Fox's web series is. I'm going to be using 3 criteria to dig apart this Fairy Fox web series. First will be cast. How many anthropomorphic characters are in this YouTube series? And are they a majority or a minority? Because it starts off in some sort of stratosphere where all of the magic foxes, whether they be fairy or just fighting, and then the hawks as well, they all live in the clouds somewhere. I can't tell if it's an alternate universe or just literally the heavens. And if so, does that mean they have different lung capacity and like body gravity science stuff? I don't think the creator thought about the science stuff about this. Then again, why would you? It's just a cartoon. It's just a cartoon. Just move on. But yeah, the fairy foxes and the hawks and the other stuff, they all exist. They are the main furry species that we care about, along with the dragon mounts, which can also talk, which is a fascinating thing. To me, it's just like if your horse could talk to you while you were riding it. I mean, we do have that in animation, but it's just, well, actually, we'll talk about that dynamic a little bit later. But for now, let's just say, despite how many humans we see, the majority of this series is spent with the foxes and the hawks. I mean, it is slightly human-centric with the BBEG's motive and all that, but given the fact that we are focusing more on the characters that are furry rather than the humans, I mean, the humans don't get much character in general, aside from the old couple. They have all the character and charm that they can get. I'm gonna rate this as a high in terms of cast. Next is furriness, meaning what all furry qualities, or anthropomorphic qualities, I should say, do these characters actually have. They possess the regular amount of cartoon furry bodies and expressions and all of that good stuff, as you would see in any cartoon, specifically something based on the Sonic the Hedgehog series, or inspired by it, I should say. And you may be asking yourself, these characters look a lot like Sonic the Hedgehog characters, and yeah, they kind of are. The design of the foxes, they are based off of Tails the Twin-Tailed Fox. It seems like the general, style of the universe that Sonic the Hedgehog is in, but it's not the same universe as Sonic the Hedgehog. There's no appearances, from what I can tell, of any of the Sonic the Hedgehog characters. It's just its own separate entity in its own separate, somewhat parallel universe. And the story of this little web series is even a little bit of a Sonic the Hedgehog-esque kind of a story, just because Sonic and his friends and enemies and frenemies end up having to save the humans in some regard, even though they are not humans themselves. The hawks and the dragons themselves are more feral with actual bodies and wings that are akin to the actual real-life species. Well, except for the dragons. Dragons aren't actually real. People thought they were real because they didn't know what dinosaur bones were. Sorry to burst that bubble. If there were such a thing as dragons in real life, then these dragon mounts that exist in this Furry Foxes universe, they are what a person thinks a dragon is, basically. I mean, maybe not the whole speaking and independent and intelligent thought. Most people are still comparing dragons to the whole beast-like mentality rather than... They are intelligent creatures in a lot of media, but people that maybe aren't as familiar with fantasy writing, or that aren't furries, I should say, they still think as dragons as these giant kaiju beasts, basically. But it is interesting to see that the dragon mounts have this sort of intelligence that are of a similar level to the fairy foxes and the hawks. And yet they're just used as a means of transportation between the two worlds. I don't know if there's any theories or discussion about their actual role in the universe. But anyway, considering the amount of magic that is used in this series, all the combat and sword swinging and flying dragons and all that these are probably not ordinary animals. So they don't have a lot of qualities to them that screams, I'm an ordinary animal, and I have these ordinary animal traits. The foxes don't try to dig holes or jump into the ground. But it is an interesting artistic choice to have them all designed in the way that they are designed. I'll go into the story relevance of that and why that might matter later, but in this case, I'll just say this is a high in regards to furriness. These are all very furry characters with all their specific, unique furry qualities, and I can appreciate that. Lastly, on our 3-point rubric is relevancy. Just how relevant are their furry qualities, these furries themselves, to the actual plot of the web series. We have ourselves another species-based sort of story, though slightly human-centric, as I've said previously. There are plenty of media that do this already. They just take one species and pit it against another species, whether they clash or are predator and prey in real life, or if there's like a symbolic meaning behind them, or if it just looks cool if one set of species is facing against the other. It's like when people were hyped up for Alien vs. Predator. And then people watch Alien vs. Predator and realize that was a dumb idea. Why did they even do that? Why did they make a sequel to that? Why do you do this, Hollywood? Why do you do this? Where is my Fairy Foxes Hollywood adaptation? I realize that Alien vs. Predator came out 3 years before Fairy Foxes, but I'm still waiting out on the Hollywood adaptation. Chrissy, look, if you're watching this, please reach out to Netflix. Give them your storyboard. Give them your story Bible. Give them your ideas. Give them your pitch. Go out there. Dream big. But even in a derivative series like this, I will give this a rating of medium high in terms of relevancy, just because of the little civil war between two different species being a very furry concept, even if that dilemma is based on the humans.
Hey, just realized I forgot to record this in post. Here's the overall breakdown of the scores.
So overall, looking into this and digging into this series, I could see it as being a decent little furry cult hit. I always give a nice little shout out to amateur no-budget efforts because this is already a no-budget effort. Like, I am literally just a guy with a costume, a microphone, a ring light, one camera, and a computer. That's all I do. That's all I have. And yet I have a YouTube channel. I have my own platform just with this setup. It's tricky being an amateur out there on a big platform like YouTube. Like, YouTube used to be big back then, a decade or so ago. It is unimaginably big now. So everyday people trying to make it, trying to be artists and stuff, that always puts a soft spot, a little warm feeling inside my soul, in my very little heart. So, Furry Foxes, I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to the next episode. If you can get past the homely quality of the first 6 or so episodes and you stick with this series, I would recommend it. It would only take you about half an hour to binge through this whole thing, maybe 30 or 40 minutes. So, not that much time on your hands. I know there are longer videos out there on YouTube. I know you guys just binge everything on the internet just because it's free and you are addicted to your phones like the Gen Z dummies that you are. I can't finish that sentence, I'm sorry. But yeah, this has been Lightning Runner here on How Furry Is It? Thanks again for watching. Gosh, it's been almost 3 or 4 years since I started doing How Furry Is It? It is now late November, the end of November, if I can edit this out in time. Once 2021 rolls around, I might just do a little retrospective of this channel, where it has gone, where it might be going, just as like do every once in a while, just because life is full of changes all the time. But if you're not interested in that, you can just skip ahead. Also, in the description below, you will see my social media links. That will be my Telegram, my Twitter, and my Instagram. You will also find my TikTok handle down there. It's the same as my Instagram, just in case you want to watch a couple of short, silly little videos from me. You will also see my Discord screen name and a link to my Discord server. This is for all people to join that like furry content. You can talk to other fans of this channel. You can talk about your favorite movies or music or cartoons. You can share memes. You can do anything you want. You will also see a link to my Patreon. For at least $1 every month, just $1, you will have access to early viewings of my videos. That will be either the day or the night before. That's all my reviews, my vlogs, any kind of video that you see on my channel. There's also the option on Patreon to sponsor a video every month. If you are an artist or a small business, you can use my videos to advertise anything you want, any projects that you're working on, any causes that you need people to see. Again, that's all in the description below, my social media, my Discord server, and my Patreon. You can give a thumbs up if you like the video, a thumbs down if you dislike the video, I won't be offended. And you can also hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon if you want to watch more videos from my channel. Though you might want to watch a couple more videos before committing to that. Look, you do what you gotta do in order to survive on here and get the clicks and views and all that. It's a business. It's a business. I make no money from it, but it is a business. But this has been Lightning Runner, Asperger the Bull, bidding you farewell. Stick around until the end of the video for an exclusive interview with the creator of Fairy Foxes. It gives some good insight into the mind of an amateur creator that has been working on the same project for 10 plus years. But anyway, it is time for me to sign out, so goodbye everybody. Oh, and special shout out to Crazy Green Fluff. Once again, thank you for the recommendation of this series. I hope you are still subscribed to the channel, by the way. Yeah, so see you later, everyone.
Sorry for the wait on this. I'm not very good at talking to myself, even after all these years, so I will do my best to answer these questions, and I hope it works out for you. So, the first one is, what is the most important thing you've learned from working on the same project for over a decade? Something I have learned from working on Fairy Foxes after all this time is actually to appreciate my older work for what it is. Like, I know episode 1 is pretty much what people would consider, not the greatest masterpiece on YouTube. I think Mark's scream in episode 1 has deafened many a viewer. But, I appreciate it because I learned so much from my earlier work, and I went through a phase of, not wanting to show people my earlier episodes, and now I just kind of embrace it. Yeah, this is where I started, and here's how I've improved. I've used Fairy Foxes as a testing ground over the years of learning new techniques, and so I've learned to accept that my old work is not as good as my new work, but that's okay, and I can still be proud of my old work because that's what I was able to make at that point in time. It's kind of like a timeline or scrapbook of my history and growth as an artist. Also, people, I think, often assume that Fairy Foxes has been my only project for over a decade, and that's not true. I'm always working on 2 or more things at a time, so it's fun to compare my other projects to where they were on the Fairy Foxes timeline. The biggest difference is that
I largely make it alone at my desk now. It used to be a social event where I'd have my friends over, I'd get all my siblings, and they'd be right there on either side of me. We'd plan out scenes together and be like, put that in! And then when I made the transition to adulthood, or even like my teenage years, I mean, I moved away obviously from my family too. So like the shock of suddenly making Fairy Foxes alone was really hard on me. It was kind of difficult to like open it up and just work on it in silence. And so that's kind of why there's a huge gap between some episodes. Making it through episode 10 was really, really tough on me. I don't even know how I completed it, to be honest. But that said, that I feel like that started to change because there's like these amazing people that made a Fairy Foxes Discord group, and like a ton of people joined it, and so I get to stream and talk to them now, so it's sort of getting its old spark back. And a bunch of the original voice actors came back for it, and so that just really means a lot to me, that it's becoming more of a social event in some different sort of way, but I really like it. Like, I am always shocked by the impact that Fairy Foxes has had on other people. I've gotten multiple heartfelt messages and comments that make me cry from people who like grew up with it. Sometimes when I'm at conventions, people will recognize me. I have no Fairy Foxes stuff on my table right now when I go to conventions, but somebody came up to my table and was like, "Are you the girl who made Fairy Foxes?" I'm like, "Yeah, how'd you find me?" And so we had a good squee over it. And that's happened a couple times now. An emotional connection with a stranger, and I like somehow made their life a little brighter. Like, that is my ultimate goal as an artist, and so like knowing I accomplished it in some small way really, I don't know, it makes me warm and fuzzy inside. The other thing that surprises me about Fairy Foxes is I sort of met my husband through it. I think how he found my channel was he found one of my popular Sonic videos, that he decided to give Fairy Foxes a shot, and he was gonna give up on it until he hit the stupid stadium joke in episode 2, and he thought that was funny and subscribed.
How'd you get there so fast? It is a known fact that if you run around a stadium, you'll end up where you started.
He could have just as easily scrolled on, and I don't think we would have ever met. Alright, so I would love to make an official reboot, like with the same concept and characters. I'd do it correctly this time. I'm so much more experienced as a writer and an artist that I feel like I could, you know, make a cohesive story. I think it has a lot of potential if I, you know, made it a real script and like made story beats and had proper production values. But I am just one person, and making it really nice and like Netflix worthy, I guess you could say, would be something beyond the scope of what I feel I could accomplish in a reasonable amount of time. So that takes money and organization skills that I have yet to learn. So maybe someday. As it is right now, I think I'll just keep making episodes for fun. I would say always be challenging yourself and don't be afraid of failure, because failure is a stepping stone to success. So in Fairy Foxes, I like to pick a new challenge for myself that I've never done before. Like in the last episode, I wanted to compose all the internal music myself and like not run to Kevin MacLeod for music or beg my friends for stuff. That was something I wanted to do myself. So having a project like Fairy Foxes helped me overcome like the roadblocks of failure, because I'm like, I want to get this episode out, and so I'll do everything I can to problem solve through stuff like that. And then the other advice that I have is that sometimes quantity is better than quality. I am a reformed perfectionist. I used to spend so much time on the details and and like making sure each thing was perfectly shaded, and it took so much time that I probably could have, you know, made 2 animated series out of the time I was spending getting everything perfect. And I look back and I find mistakes in it now because I've improved. So I would say, like, just make a compromise, do what you can to get a project out and finished. Because I spent 10 years on this, and I could have spent maybe 3 3 or less or 6 months or something. Like, don't go to stick figures, but don't go crazy overboard in the other direction either. Simplification. It's good for you. It's okay. I'm sorry. I know it's funny, but it's a silly show, but I love it, and I hope you do too.